Not being happy with where my life is going, I decided to change it, and I took it and put it in my own hands, had work clothes on, and I went to work and built some cars that no one's ever seen before.
What if I told you the man who built cars from nothing is now standing in the middle of the one thing he never thought he had lose? And the fans who once worshipped him now whisper that he has destroyed everything with his own hands? What if I told you the biggest tragedy in bad Chad Hiltz's life didn't happen in front of the cameras, but behind closed doors when nobody was watching, and it cost him far more than any car, any friendship, or any business ever could? Because before the fame, before the custom builds, before the TV crews, there was a single moment that changed Chad's entire life trajectory, so painful, so humiliating, so destructive that even today he refuses to talk about it. But here's the twist. The tragedy didn't end there. It followed him, it grew with him, and now at the height of his career, it's coming back to destroy everything he built. His crew walked out, his partner left, his reputation shattered, his ego exploded, and now the world is asking just one question. Is this the end of bad Chad? Stay with me, because once you hear what really happened, you will never see Chad Hiltz the same way again. Not as a builder, not as a celebrity, not even as a man. Before we start, hit like and subscribe. From the beginning, Chad Hiltz never fit into the world of traditional car builders. He wasn't born into a wealthy garage, didn't have access to high-end equipment, and never followed the rules that define most custom shops. Instead, he built his name in a tiny corner of Nova Scotia, where rusted metal and abandoned scrap piles became his playground. What others saw as junk, he saw as potential. A door panel from one wreck, a roofline from another, a handful of discarded parts that most people wouldn't bother picking up. Chad could turn them into something that looked like it came from a lost era of hot rods and experimental design. His early builds earned him a reputation as the guy who didn't wait for the perfect tools or perfect conditions. He simply worked with what he had. Fans admired that. People in the community talked about him as a natural-born creator, someone who could shape metal like clay and imagine cars that didn't exist anywhere else. His style wasn't clean or conventional, but it was bold, artistic, and unmistakably his. That raw creativity became the identity of Bad Chad, the character that would one day capture millions of viewers. But even in those early days, the same qualities that made Chad unique also created friction. His intensity, his drive, and his need to control every inch of a project didn't always sit well with those around him. People who worked with him respected his vision, but struggled with his pace and personality. Still, his talent outweighed the tension, and his following kept growing. The world was beginning to notice, and Chad's small-town shop was about to become a television set. And when the cameras finally arrived, they didn't just change his life, they revealed a side of Chad no one expected. When Discovery Channel introduced Bad Chad Customs, it felt like the perfect match between raw talent and global attention. Viewers were instantly pulled into Chad's world, a cramped Nova Scotia garage filled with sparks, scrap metal, and ideas that seemed almost impossible to execute. His builds weren't polished showpieces meant to impress luxury buyers. They were rough, creative, and born out of instinct rather than blueprints. That authenticity made the show a hit. People loved watching a builder who didn't need million-dollar tools to create something unforgettable. Season after season, fans watched Chad push boundaries, challenge norms, and turn discarded parts into dramatic custom builds. His team brought energy, skill, and personality, and the dynamic between them made the show even more compelling. It looked like the start of a long television career, one that could evolve into a franchise. But then, just as the momentum was building, everything stopped. No farewell episode, no network announcement, no explanation to viewers. The show simply disappeared. What should have been a growing empire fell silent overnight, leaving fans confused and the internet full of unanswered questions. Why did Discovery walk away from a series that was gaining traction? What happened inside the shop when the cameras weren't rolling? And why did Chad never address the cancellation directly? The sudden quiet created a vacuum that people quickly filled with guesses and rumors. Something behind the scenes had changed, and whatever it was, it marked the beginning of a decline that fans are still talking about today. But the cancellation was only the first sign. The real unraveling began when viewers started noticing something different in Chad himself. As the spotlight grew brighter, something in Chad's presence began to shift, and fans were the first to call it out. The builder, who once felt humble and hungry for creativity, started coming across as harder, sharper, and far more controlling. Viewers began noticing moments on camera where his patience ran thin, his voice cut deeper, and his reactions felt heavier than before. What started as small comments soon turned into a steady wave of criticism online, as longtime supporters wondered whether fame had changed him or whether the pressure had finally cracked through the outer layer he always tried to maintain. It wasn't just casual viewers speaking up. Comment sections, reaction videos, and fan discussions grew filled with blunt claims about his attitude, his ego, and the habits people believed were influencing his behavior. One viewer wrote that Chad was now facing reality because his own personality had pushed people away. Others mentioned struggles with focus, impulsive decisions, and emotional outbursts that made working with him difficult. Some even suggested alcohol and stress were playing a part in the growing tension. These weren't confirmed details, just raw opinions pouring in from those who had followed his journey closely and felt disappointed by what they saw as a dramatic change in character. The most repeated sentiment was that Chad had started to believe he was untouchable, a top-tier builder whose vision outweighed everyone else's input. Fans argued that he forgot about the talented friends who once helped turn impossible builds into finished creations. They felt he pushed people out not because he didn't need them, but because he wanted the spotlight to shine only on him. And instead of building a stronger legacy, he ended up isolating himself from the very team that helped shape his early success. These claims, true or not, became the fuel behind a growing controversy. Viewers began asking whether the downfall of Bad Chad Customs was really about the show or whether it was about the man at the center of it. And soon, that tension didn't just affect the audience. It began tearing apart the crew behind the scenes, leading to the moment everything truly fell apart. Behind the camera, the workshop once felt like a tight unit, a group of builders who balanced Chad's intense creativity with their own experience and steady hands. But as the months passed, something changed inside that garage. One by one, familiar faces began disappearing from the videos, from the shop floor, and eventually from Chad's life altogether. There was no drama-filled announcement, no public explanation. People simply stopped showing up, and the silence around their absence spoke louder than any statement could. The rumors spread quickly. Some viewers believed Chad had become so focused on proving himself that he stopped valuing the people who helped him get there. Others said he became difficult to collaborate with, shutting down ideas, rejecting suggestions, and insisting that his vision was the only one that mattered. What had once been a creative environment slowly turned into a space where tension overtook teamwork. Skilled builders who had supported him for years reportedly grew tired of the strain and walked away before the conflicts grew worse. Fans noticed that the shop's energy wasn't the same. The playful back and forth, the shared excitement, the feeling of multiple minds coming together, those moments faded. Without the crew's collective skill, the builds looked harder, the workload heavier, and the atmosphere colder. People who followed the channel from the beginning knew something deeper had shifted. Chad wasn't just losing helpers, he was losing the foundation of what made his shop special. And the most telling part? No matter how much speculation spread, Chad never stepped in to clarify what happened. The silence only made the questions louder. Did the crew leave because of growing tensions, because of ego clashes, or because the pressure of the spotlight magnified every small disagreement until the team finally broke? Whatever the reason, their absence marked a turning point. Chad was no longer part of a creative team, he was standing alone in a shop that used to be full of life. And soon, the fallout reached the person fans thought would never leave his side. For years, viewers believed that as long as Jolene was by Chad's side, the operation would stay steady. She wasn't just his partner, she was the structure behind the chaos. While Chad shaped metal, Jolene shaped the business, handling the brand, the marketing, the planning, and the direction of nearly everything that kept Bad Chad Customs moving forward. Many fans quietly agreed she was the reason the show felt organized, the projects felt grounded, and the content stayed consistent. But as the shop's atmosphere shifted, people began noticing that Jolene appeared less frequently or seemed more distant in certain videos. Her usual confidence and calm energy weren't always there, and that change triggered a new wave of speculation. Some viewers blamed Chad's behavior, suggesting he didn't value her guidance the way he once did. Others said she looked exhausted from trying to hold everything together while the team around them unraveled. A few even claimed that her reduced presence was a sign she was stepping back to protect her own peace. Fan comments grew sharper. Many openly stated that Chad wouldn't survive the pressure of the business without Jolene keeping things balanced. Some said he didn't treat her influence seriously enough. Others pointed out moments where their partnership seemed strained, hinting that the weight of running an entire brand while dealing with rising criticism had taken a toll on both of them. What made this even more intense was the emotional connection viewers had to Jolene. To them, she represented the heart of the operation, the glue that held everything together when Chad's intensity risked pulling it apart. So, when she seemed to fade from the spotlight, fans didn't just worry about her, they worried about what her absence meant for Chad's future. The backlash wasn't gentle. Comments poured in saying he wouldn't make it without her, that he had lost the support of the one person who always grounded him, and that his attitude was pushing away the last stable part of his life and brand. Whether these claims were true didn't matter, perception had already shaped the narrative. And the moment Jolene's presence shifted, people immediately noticed the effect on the shop, the builds, and the man at the center of it all. Because the next phase of Chad's story showed exactly what happens when a creator finds himself standing in a quieter, emptier workshop, forced to face what he pushed away. Chad's breaking point didn't come from the shop, the crew, or the criticism, it came from his own body. Fans started noticing he looked exhausted in videos, his face thinner, his energy uneven, and his voice carrying a strain that hadn't been there before. What began as small changes soon grew into something more alarming. He appeared winded during simple tasks, his hands shook at moments that never used to faze him, and there were days when he didn't seem fully present on camera. Viewers whispered about stress, burnout, and the pressure of carrying too much alone, but the truth became impossible to ignore when he experienced a medical emergency that forced everything in his world to slow down. According to people close to the situation, Chad had been pushing himself far beyond what his body could handle. The long nights, the non-stop work, and the emotional strain had all built up. But the one factor that worried fans the most and that people openly discussed online was his increasing dependence on alcohol. They noticed the signs. They talked about it in comments. They connected it to his declining energy and unstable behavior. Whether he meant to or not, Chad had started numbing the stress with drinking, and it began showing in ways he couldn't hide. When the health scare happened, it wasn't just a wake-up call for him. It was a moment that made viewers realize how fragile everything around him had become. And through all of it, Jolene was the one who stayed. She was there when the cameras were off, when the shop lights dimmed, and when the reality of his condition weighed heavier than any project deadline. She helped him steady himself, reminded him to slow down, and encouraged him to take his health seriously before the situation worsened. Even as rumors swirled about tension between them, Jolene didn't step away in his moment of crisis. She became the quiet anchor beside a man who had built his entire world on intensity, speed, and pressure. Chad might have been fighting his own body, his own habits, and the consequences of years of pushing too hard. But he wasn't alone while it happened, and viewers could see that the person who stood with him during his lowest moment was the same person many believed had kept his career from falling apart long before the health issues began. But even with Jolene beside him, the world outside the shop wasn't done questioning him. A louder, sharper wave of criticism was still heading his way. Today, Bad Chad's world looks completely different from the chaotic years that led to his health scare. Instead of chasing the fast pace that once consumed him, he has shifted into a slower, more grounded chapter of his life. Fans who follow him closely have seen the signs of change. His projects are more intentional, his videos carry a calmer tone, and his personal life has taken a turn no one expected. Chad is preparing for fatherhood again, with his girlfriend now pregnant and standing beside him as he rebuilds his sense of purpose. That news alone surprised longtime viewers who never imagined he would start this new chapter at this stage in his life. The pregnancy has created a new kind of motivation for him. It pushed him to reevaluate how he works, how he manages stress, and how much longer he can keep pushing his body through the intense demands of custom building. People around him say he seems more focused on stability now than he has been in years, trying to create a safer environment for his growing family and stepping back from the constant pressure he once thrived on. Another major change is the leadership inside the shop. Instead of handling every decision himself, Chad now relies heavily on a manager who oversees the day-to-day operations. This shift has given the shop the structure it lacked for years. The manager handles schedules, workflow, customer communication, and the organizational tasks that Chad never had patience for. It allows him to focus on the creative side of building without burning himself out. Fans have noticed the improvement, saying the shop feels steadier and more balanced than it did during the most chaotic moments of his past. With the support of his partner, the guidance of a dedicated manager, and the motivation of becoming a father again, Chad is trying to rebuild his life from the inside out. He still creates, he still welds, and he still pushes himself. But he is no longer doing it alone or from a place of desperation. For the first time in a long time, his future feels less like a storm and more like a path he can walk without breaking himself in the process. But even with these changes, one final question remains: whether Chad can truly rebuild his reputation and legacy after everything that has happened. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe, share, comment, and like to support the channel.